A woman walks along the sidewalk, practicing Italian words, as she tries to learn the language. She spots a bike rental shop across the street and takes out a sheet of paper from her bag. It's a list titled, Scott's Bucket List. She turns the page and finds wish number 37, which says, ride an electric scooter. A couple walks by her. The woman is telling the man that she is glad they could finally meet. The man apologizes, citing his busy schedule at work. The woman continues excitedly telling him about the place they are going to, when she makes a reference to there being a drink on their menu, and suddenly gets all awkward, as she realizes that what she said may remind him of his wife's passing. Just then, he gets a call, and it's an emergency, so he needs to leave. She gets flustered and waves him goodbye, with encouraging words about him saving lives as an doctor. At the scooter rental across the street, Sarah asks the rental shop owner if the helmets are safe. He reassures her they are. At the hospital, the doctor, Ryan, asks his colleague Gloria, who set him up for the blind date earlier, what she was thinking. She proudly tells him that Becky is now his war story from when he tried to get back into the dating pool, something he can share with the woman he really wants. He goes to his last patient of the day, which turns out to be Sarah. He asks her about her injury. She tells him it's a very embarrassing story, and he promises to call it, tripped on the curb, on the patient form. They share a laugh about it. He informs her she will need to get an X-ray. He asks for a contact person to drive her home, so she asks him to call her best friend and sister-in-law, Maggie. Somewhere else in the town, Maggie looks at the expense sheet and tells the contractor, and her boyfriend, Teddy, that she is worried about the expenditures in the bookshop. She turns around and finds him standing behind her in a suit. She is surprised to see him all dressed up, and asks him about it. He tells her he plans to do something, and a suit is the most appropriate outfit for it. She realizes he is about to propose to her, gets emotional, and accepts immediately. Suddenly, she gets worried, as she hasn't even told Sarah she and Teddy are dating, and now they are engaged. She asks Teddy to give her some time, as she feels guilty because Sarah just lost the love of her life, Scott, who also happens to be her brother. Just then, she gets a phone call from the hospital, and she rushes over. At the hospital, Maggie fusses over Sarah and asks Ryan if there is anything to worry about. Ryan tells her it's just a simple fracture, and the cast will stay on for about 4 weeks. Maggie and Sarah leave as Ryan looks on, amused. At home, Maggie hides the ring from Sarah. They talk about the bookstore. Maggie tells Sarah they are going over budget. Sarah reassures her that it will all work out. Maggie is worried they may be going overboard, leaving their well-paying PR jobs and opening up a bookstore. Sarah reminds her that they hated their jobs, and she will cover the store with the life insurance money if need be. Maggie is uneasy that Sarah is spending all the life insurance money like this, but Sarah professes that it was Scott's dream to own a bookstore, and he would love it. Maggie gets emotional remembering Scott. They hug and comfort each other. The next day, at the hospital, Ryan meets his regular patients, Nate and Ellie. He asks them why they didn't go to the on-call doctor at their retirement community, but they tell him that they don't trust him, and that Ryan is their doctor. He thanks them for their faith in him. Ellie tells him that she and Nate are engaged. At the bookstore, Teddy and Maggie are flirting when Sarah comes in, and they split up and pretend as if nothing is going on. Teddy asks them if they have figured out a name for the store yet. Sarah gives some silly name options, but Maggie rejects them all. Later, Ryan and Gloria are getting lunch, and Gloria starts talking about a cousin of hers. As she lists out her qualities, Ryan asks her about what she is hiding from him. Gloria confesses that her cousin may have done a little bit of jail time. He laughs and tells her he knew there was a catch. Sarah walks by a club and spots the open mic poster outside, making a note on her bucket list sheet. She goes to the cemetery and talks to Scott by his grave. She tells him about her fracture. As she walks back to the car, she spots Ryan getting out of his car with a beautiful bunch of flowers. She asks about the flowers, and he says they were his wife's favorite. She gives her condolences and asks her name. Ryan tells her his wife's name was Harper, surprised she asked that, as people generally don't bother. They discuss how long it has been since their partners passed, bonding over their shared pain. She explains that she comes to the cemetery every Sunday to tell Scott all the things she did that week. They exchange knowing nods. Sarah leaves while Ryan goes to his wife's grave. Later that evening, Maggie and Teddy are walking about in town. They make plans for the wedding and the honeymoon. As they walk by a club, they hear Sarah's voice, go inside and see her performing on the stage. She is trying to do a stand-up routine, but is failing miserably. Maggie and Teddy watch from the back for a bit as Sarah gets booed by the crowd, and when she finally steps off the stage, they leave quietly before she can spot them. Teddy asks Maggie why they had to rush off instead of meeting Sarah, and she explains that because Sarah didn't tell her about doing it, that means she didn't want her to know. She wonders why Sarah is being secretive, but Teddy reminds her that they are hiding the fact that they got engaged. Sarah, on the other hand, crosses one more item off Scott's bucket list. On the other side of the town, Ryan gets home and lays on the bed, exhausted. He removes a chain from around his neck and slips off the wedding ring he wears on it. He puts the chain back in a box and slips his wedding ring on his finger before falling asleep. The next Sunday at the cemetery, when Sarah walks back to the car, she finds Ryan waiting for her. She confesses that talking to him last week felt nice, and he felt the same, like they understood each other. He is glad he could talk to her, as people generally tend to get uncomfortable. He awkwardly asks her if she wants to go somewhere with him, the place he usually goes to after coming to the cemetery. He explains that he goes to a diner that serves the best pie in the world, but the catch is that the waitress who serves it is very sarcastic. Sarah is intrigued and agrees to go with him. Maggie arrives at Sarah's place, looking for the checkbook. As she speaks to Teddy on the phone, she casually jokes about going through Sarah's stuff to figure out why she was doing stand-up at the bar the other day, but Teddy warns her against snooping. They get to the diner and meet Ethel, the waitress. Sarah is fascinated to see that Ryan didn't exaggerate about Ethel, as she sarcastically replies to Sarah. They laugh about it. Later, Ryan reveals that the place was discovered by Harper. She loved discovering and visiting such little places with the least number of reviews. Sarah tells him that Scott was the complete opposite. He would check out all the reviews and research everything, even the item to be ordered, before going to the restaurant. They both find comfort in being able to talk about Harper and Scott so freely. Ryan tells her about his wife's accident, and she tells him about Scott's battle with cancer. Sarah and Ryan leave the diner. She admits it was nice to laugh with him, as everyone expects them to be sad all the time. Ryan agrees with her. They decide to meet each other again next week. Over the next couple of weeks, they talk over pies, about how people treat them, and the kind of insensitive comments they make. They laugh and joke about some of the most painful memories. A few weeks later, Sarah completes one more wish from the list, making a gingerbread house. Next Sunday, when they meet, Sarah's cast is gone, and Ryan finally asks her the real reason for her hurting her hand. She shows him the list. She explains that she tries to do one thing on it per week. Scott wrote it out when he found out about his cancer, but never got a chance to do anything, so she wants to do it for him. Ryan thinks it's amazing, and asks her if she is doing it alone. She admits she hasn't even told Maggie about it, as she wanted to keep something between her and Scott. Ryan understands, wishing he had such a list with Harper. Maggie goes to Sarah's place and finds Teddy there. He shows her a pamphlet from a wedding venue. Maggie glances through it and gives a cursory nod. Teddy tells her they need to book, but Maggie needs time to figure out how to break it to Sarah. Teddy is disappointed, as he can feel she is making excuses. Ryan and Sarah walk out of the diner. Ryan tells Sarah that he would like to help her with some of the things on the bucket list, if she wants. He asks her to shut her eyes and point at one thing on the list, and they will do it together. Sarah points at singing at a karaoke place. They go to a karaoke bar and sing a song together. Ryan, in exuberance, hugs Sarah, who is taken aback a bit. Later, he thanks her for letting him help, and offers to do more, but she is uncomfortable, making the excuse that most of the other stuff is solo. They promise to meet next Sunday and go their separate ways. One day, Sarah is at home working when Teddy walks in looking for Maggie. She tells him Maggie is out, and as he turns to leave, he knocks a box down, spilling Sarah's personal effects. As they pick the fallen things up, Sarah gets emotional and tells him that she and Scott were going to take salsa classes, but never got a chance, and that one should not put off stuff for later. Sarah suddenly realizes that she should not wait again, and calls up Ryan. They meet outside the diner, and she tells him that she needs his help with another thing on the list, learning salsa. They go to their first class and stare at the couples dancing. At the hospital the next day, Ryan practices his steps unconsciously, but Gloria notices it and calls him up on it. He tells her about taking dance classes with Sarah. She cautions him about a similar incident with another friend of hers, who was also a widow and met another widower at a support group. Her friend started dating the widower, but later was heartbroken, because they didn't have anything else in common. Ryan assures her that for him, it's just dancing with a friend. Just then, he gets a page from Nate and Ellie. He goes to the retirement community, worried one of them may be injured, but finds them both fine and healthy. They show him the banquet room and the area where they plan to have the wedding. Ryan gets a bit irritated, as he rushed over, worried that he was on call for emergencies. Apparently it is an emergency, though, as Ellie's son cannot make it to the wedding, and he was supposed to walk her down the aisle, so she asks Ryan to do that for her. Ryan is touched and agrees. For the first dance, Ryan suggests they join salsa, which is where they meet Sarah, and immediately take a liking to her. While dancing, Ryan and Sarah have a lot of fun. The four of them go out for pie. Later, when it is just both of them, Sarah remarks to Ryan that she wants to be like Ellie and Nate, and how incredible it is that they found love again at their age. As she says this, Ryan looks at her wonderingly. She asks Ryan if he has started dating, and he tells her of the incident with Becky. He suddenly realizes he told Sarah the war story, just like Gloria told him. She tells him she is not ready to date yet, and thanks him for talking to her. Ryan looks on at her, realizing that he may be starting to have feelings for her. Maggie and Teddy discuss flooring at the bookstore. He gets annoyed with her for being so confused and indecisive. She realizes he is upset about something else entirely, but Teddy just shrugs it off and leaves. She rushes after him. He tells her that he can see she is not excited about the wedding, and she hardly ever speaks of their engagement. They reach an impasse, and Teddy walks away. Ryan asks Sarah about what she has on her bucket list. She tells him she has never thought about it, but then remarks she has never flown a kite and would like to. Ryan is amazed, as it is something that he always wanted to do as well. They decide to do it, like the first thing on their own bucket list. A few days later, when they both have an afternoon off, Sarah and Ryan meet to fly a kite. They grow closer still as they continue with the salsa lessons, laughing and stumbling together, while Maggie and Teddy drift further apart. Maggie tries to talk to Teddy, promising that she will tell Sarah about them. Teddy, though, insists that that is not the issue. He feels she is not ready for it. There is something holding her back, and she needs to figure it out. Gloria visits Ethel to give her an order for Ellie and Nate's wedding. When she encounters Ethel's sarcasm, she matches it word for word. On the day of her last salsa class, Sarah dresses up and is about to leave when Maggie arrives. She is taken by surprise and struggles with a plausible explanation for it. Maggie realizes that she is lying, but she does not call her on it, as she feels guilty about the things she is hiding from Sarah. They both realize they are hiding things from each other. Sarah hugs Maggie and tells her she loves her. After she leaves, Maggie finds the bucket list and finally finds out why Sarah is behaving the way she is. Sarah arrives at the salsa class. She tells Ryan she is very nervous, and he helps her calm down. They start dancing and gracefully perform the whole bit. By the end of the dance, they realize there is something more between them. Later, as they have pie at Ethel's, they both feel they need to talk about it. Ryan tries to play it lightly, but later he tells her that instead of talking about it, they should just do something about those feelings, and he kisses her. Later, when he goes home, he finally puts the ring and the chain back in the box before going to sleep, finally ready to move on. Sarah gets home and looks at the boxes scattered around the house, and finally starts sorting through them, ready to let go of the memories of her past life. The next day, she is still packing the stuff to give away or throw out when Teddy comes in looking for Maggie again. She asks Teddy about Maggie. She knows Maggie has been upset lately, but when she tried to ask her, she didn't tell her anything. Teddy reveals that he and Maggie are dating. Sarah gets very happy and hugs him. She asks him why they didn't tell her. Teddy explains that Maggie wanted to wait until the first anniversary. Sarah does not comprehend at first, and then when Teddy mentions it, she realizes that Scott's first anniversary of his passing is coming up, and she had forgotten all about it. Suddenly all her elation vanishes, and she gets worried and starts unpacking the stuff. She asks Teddy to leave, as she wants to be alone. She goes into panic mode, and feels that she is not ready to let go yet. At the hospital, Ryan is happy and humming, and the people around him notice his obvious joy. Gloria teases him about it. He tells her he is happy and may have a date for Nate and Ellie's wedding. Gloria is a bit concerned, and it shows in her reaction to his statement. Ryan reassures her that he understands the complications of their situation, and despite the baggage that they both come with, he feels Sarah is worth the effort he would need to put in. He asks Gloria to not worry and be happy for him. Ryan gets home and tries to call Sarah, but gets her machine instead. He leaves a message for her reminding her about the wedding, and that he is looking forward to seeing her the next week. Sarah hears his message but ignores it. She just can't get over the fact of it being almost a year since Scott passed. Ryan waits for her at the cemetery, but she never shows up. He leaves a message for her apologizing in case he made a mistake, but she continues to ignore his messages. He waits for her at Ethel's, and she finally comes. She tells him she is not ready to move on. She goes ahead and asks him about how he felt the first time he went without thinking about Harper, or started to forget her face. He admits that it felt like being heartbroken all over again. She apologizes to him and leaves. Ryan is left devastated. Ethel, for the first time, gives him a piece of pie on the house and comforts him. Maggie finds Sarah at home, sitting on the floor in darkness. She apologizes to her for not telling her the truth. Sarah tells her she understands, and that both of them were so worried about hurting each other that they kept secrets. She tells her that she loves her and is happy for her, but she needs some time alone to be sad. Ryan shares the situation with Gloria. She sympathizes with him. Maggie, on the other hand, is very worried about Sarah being alone. Ryan meets with Ellie and Nate. Ellie coaches him on what to say as he gives her away for the wedding. She tells him Sarah called to inform her that she won't make it to the wedding, and that she feels sad, as Sarah and Ryan made a nice couple. Ryan tells her they were never a couple, but just friends, but Ellie doesn't believe him. Sarah is back to learning the language and doing everything she was doing before she met Ryan. As Ryan dresses up for the wedding, he takes the ring out of the box again, but then places it back, realizing that he is now indeed ready to move on. The wedding date and Scott's anniversary happen to be on the same day. Sarah dresses up to go to the cemetery. She and Maggie walk up to Scott's gravestone together, while on the other side, Nate walks Ellie down the aisle. When the minister asks who gives the woman away at the wedding, Nate says it's her friends and family, gathered there for her. Later, Sarah and Maggie sit at home. Maggie tells Sarah that Scott would have hated seeing them so low in mourning. They reminisce about old times. Maggie asks her why she hid the list from her, and Sarah tells her that just like she didn't share her happy news, Sarah could not share this with her. She finally tells Maggie about Ryan. She tells her how she and Ryan understood each other's sadness, and sharing and talking with him helped her be a little less sad. Meanwhile, at the wedding, Nate and Ellie tell Ryan he needs to give a speech. Sarah and Maggie start filling up the bookshelves. Maggie asks Sarah if she was planning to do all the things on the list. She reminds her that the list is Scott's list, not hers, and she shouldn't forget to do things for herself. That reminds Sarah about the kite flying, and she tells Maggie how she and Ryan, at Ryan's insistence, did something on her list. She suddenly realizes that she needs to go to Ryan and apologize. She's given up on something great, and she can't let him slip through her fingers. She has to come clean about how she feels. Scott was her past, but Ryan could be her future. But on her way to the wedding, her car breaks down, and she grabs the electric bike again. Maggie goes to Teddy, finally understanding why she was hesitating. She always thought Scott would walk her down the aisle, but now, she will have to take such a huge step without him. The couple finally make up. Ryan is just about to start his speech when Sarah walks in. He is surprised to see her, and makes his speech where he talks about how Nate and Ellie finding love again is like the next chapter of their lives. Afterwards, Sarah tells him that she felt she needed to forget Scott to be with Ryan, so she couldn't bring herself to take that step. But she has now realized she can keep them both in her heart. Ryan understands, and they kiss happily. In the epilogue, we see Sarah and Maggie opening the bookstore, and they finally unveil the name of the store, the next chapter.